your pardon, sir, but it is Mr. Dodson, isn't it?
Is it?
Yes, yes, how delightful. Don't you remember me at all, sir? My name is Ellen, Mr. Dodson. Ellen Ransom.
Ellen.
You used to tell me stories and all sorts of puzzles when you were once on holiday in the Isle of Wight. We were on the beach, Mr. Dodson, and you dug a hole in the sand for me, very deep.
Really?
Yes. Oh, yes, I remember it as clearly as though it happened yesterday. You told me then that if we kept on digging and digging and digging, we'd most likely, most definitely come up on the other side of the world, upside down.
A rather jolly idea, eh?
You asked me to consider myself your very special friend, Mr. Dodson. I've often wished since that I could remember some of the stories you told me.
Oh, yes, rather.
It's of no consequence.
Naturally. I could not know then that you would have become so famous as Mr. Lewis Carroll, Mr. Dodson.
Yes, the author of, oh gosh, Alice in Wonderland.
But I should have known. Your stories were magical, Mr. Dodson.
Yes, you've always said so, haven't you, Ellen?
I only wish I could remember them. I'm sure that you recall me just a little. Don't you, Mr. Dodson? Digging holes in the sand. And now do you know what, Mr. Dodson? I'm soon going to be married.
Yes, I'm the lucky young fellow, sir.
Really can't imagine why you should think that I should be in the least interested in your affairs. I'm late.
It's a beautiful broom there, isn't it, sir? Well, begging your pardon, Reverend.
What?
The rose, sir. You seem to be admiring that there white rose, sir.
The rose? Yes, thank you.
Seems a pity it has to fade so soon, doesn't it, sir?
What?
The rose, sir, the rose.
Oh, yes, the rose.
I was just remarking, it seems a shame that such a beautiful something has to wither. No, within a month, maybe them petals will be rotting away here on the turf.
Well, it happens to all things, you know. It happens to all things.
Beg your pardon, sir?
The little girl on your knee grows into a mature woman.
Yeah, you're right there. You know, there's my daughter. I used to dip her dummy in the honey pot. She's grown up now. She's got young'uns of her own.
In any case, I prefer red roses.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
We could always paint them red, sir. Begging your pardon, sir.
You're too bloody cheeky, lad. Hey, your book, sir! Well, I'll be blowed. Tales for good children. Yep, you watch that leg, boy. Now listen. You wait till you're safe at home before you start laughing at the gentleman tutors. And even then, you got no cause to be poking fun at the shy man.
But he looked as though...
18 white roses red indeed.
But he looked as though he didn't know whether he's coming or going.
Ah, you're right there. He's a rum bloke, that Mr. Dodson. Here, Harold, you run after him with these here books. And be sharp about it. Go on now. Hey, and Harold, you put them kiddies' tails on the bottom, understand? There's no point in embarrassing the poor soul anymore.
Excuse me, sir, your books.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
Shall I carry them up for you, sir? They're very heavy.
Painting white roses red, eh? No, thank you. I'll carry my own books.
Full.
11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Why shouldn't white roses be painted red? Alice would be enchanted by the very idea.
Would you tell me, please, why are you painting those roses?
Well, as a matter of fact, you seen this? It's like this. This here should have been a red rose tree. But we must have planted a white one by mistake. And if the Queen got to hear of this, we should all have our heads cut off, you know. So, you see, we're doing our best in case she should come along to make an inspection of the garden, you see. Time about it, didn't you?
He had a word or two with me, that's why.
Well, don't hang about, laddie. Go and rake them leaves up.
Alice.
Was there while the blackbird was cheerfully singing, I first met that dear one, the joy of my heart. Around us for gladness, the bluebells were ringing. Ah, then little thought I how soon we would part.
No, Alice.
Oh, don't be so horrid, Lorena. You know very well that I always sing nicely.
How soon we should part. Should part, Alice, not would part.
Would part. That's the way I always sing it.
Then you don't sing it right, Alice.
Don't say don't, Edith. Say do not. It's vulgar to say don't.
But you said it.
Oh. Anyway, I'm not going to perform for you anymore. You're always spoiling things for me, Lorena. You never say how nicely I sing.
You don't sing nice, that's why.
Oh, that's not true. Dear Alice, everyone spoils you, and with reason.
No.
People like to come to the deanery just to hear you sing. You're so neat and pretty, and you sing like a lark.
But Mr. Dodson, he says I sometimes remind him of a wistful little beggar girl.
Who said that?
Mr. Dodson, the mathematics tutor, Mamma.
Mr. Dodson said that.
Oh, don't fret, Mother. He wasn't talking about my clothes. They're always much too
He
nice.
certainly wasn't talking about your humility.
Well, then what was he talking about, Alice?
He was talking about photographs, Mother.
Did he want you to pose for a photographic picture?
Of course.
Oh, much too vain, Alice.
Mr. Dodson must be very silly.
Edith, you must not talk about your elders and betters in such a disrespectful fashion.
No, Mamma.
Mr. Dodson may well want for ease of conversation at times. I think that mathematics is rather dull. But as regards the photographic camera, he's becoming very distinguished.
He's photographed Mr. Tennyson, you know.
But Tennyson was very rude to poor Mr. Dodson. You didn't know that, did you?
How do you mean rude, child?
Did he make fun of his stutter?
Mr. Dodson went to stay with Mr. Tennyson when he went to take the portrait. Well, after tea in the smoke room, Tennyson told all his guests that he often dreamed long passages of poetry.
How remarkable.
Then he turned very haughtily to poor Mr. Dodson, who had scarcely said a word.
How do you know?
Because he told me, of course. And he turned to Mr. Dodson and said, "You, I suppose, dream photographs."
Mr. Dodson seems to confess a remarkable number of things to you, my dear.
Oh, yes, he talks to me a lot. He says that every man should have someone he can trust his secrets with.
Trust, Alice.
And why should he say that to you?
Because he loves me, of course.
Thank you, Thornton. Much more praiseworthy than your previous efforts.
Yes, sir. Well, I'm only burning my candle at one end nowadays, sir. Trimming my wicks a bit, you might say.
Meaning?
Well, it's just a form of expression, sir.
Did you mean to infer something indelicate, sir?
No.
How dare you? I will not have such remarks made in my presence. You are behaving like a lout, sir.
Oh, I say, sir, I didn't mean anything, you know.
No, I don't know, Thornton. And I don't wish to know. I have long taught myself to put aside these instances of vice and immorality that have so multiplied amongst this generation of doubters and downright atheists.
If I may say so, Mr. Dodson, you have completely misunderstood a perfectly ordinary and innocent remark.
Everyone suffers from blasphemous thoughts, unholy thoughts, which torture with their presence the fancy that fain would be pure. Against all these, a little mental work is a most helpful ally.
Yes, sir.
Never sit and stare at the picture in the fire.
Oh, I don't, sir.
Little real mental work, Thornton. Real mental work. Thornton.
Sir?
Consider this. 4 times 5 is 12. 4 times 6 is 13. 4 times 7 is 14. 4 times 8 is 15. Will I ever get to 20? Tell me next week. It's a question of scales, Thornton.
Ah, yes, sir.
You may leave me.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
You don't get to 20 that way, do you, little elf in locks? Oh, it really is a very pretty little puzzle.
Dodson?
Dean Little.
I did knock, Dodson, but you seem to be in the throes of intellectual labor. Well, I'm sorry if I startled you. There's nothing wrong, is there?
No, of course not. I just had rather a heavy tutorial, and it left me exhausted. Won't you sit down, Dean? This is indeed a pleasure.
No, Dodson, I was just passing your stair, and I thought I'd leave you a copy of some proposals regarding the chapel. What's this my daughters have been telling me about you?
Well, I really can't imagine.
Well, they say that you tell them charmingly improbable tales when taking photographs in your rooms.
Those?
Alison seems as most impressed with what is called, am I correct, a darkroom. It all sounds a very mysterious process, I must say. But I dare say I might be persuaded to sit for you myself in my academic robes, eh?
Well, that would be a pleasure.
Oh, yes. Now, before I forget, I am to pass on to an invitation from Alice.
Oh?
Alice, her 2 sisters, her mother, and Mr. Duckworth, ecclesiastical duties permitting, are taking a boat on the river tomorrow afternoon, with a copper kettle, a basket of Chelsea buns, and, if you are agreeable, you, Mr. Dodson.
Well, that would be nice. Are you sure that Mrs. Little has no objection?
No, not at all. Why should she? Indeed, so far as I can gather, she is very interested in your friendship with my daughters. Well, good day, Mr. Dodson. And, jolly good boating weather.
wish this could go on forever and ever and ever.
Perhaps it will.
Nonsense, Mr. Dodson. Nothing lasts forever. At least not on this earth, anyway.
Ah, but it does, Mrs. Little. It does go on forever. At least, if you're rowing, it does.
Nevertheless, we have to be back at the Deanery an hour before 7 o'clock dinner, Mr. Duckworth.
Oh, Mama, don't talk about going back yet.
Dear, no, we haven't even had our tea and cakes yet. Very nice cakes, too. Now, I think we ought to find a nice, well-shaded hayrick soon. Very soon.
Oh, lovely.
Shall we row over to that big field over there, Mr. Dodson? The one with the red roof barn? I take it that at least you're not out of this world, Mr. Duckworth.
Only on Sundays, Ma'am.
Apologize at once. What a dreadful thing to do.
King Neptune, Mr. Dodson. King Neptune, King Neptune, King Neptune, King Neptune.
Edith, be quiet.
But he was looking at me.
A cat can look at a queen, you know.
Looking at you? I don't know what you mean. Now say you're sorry at once.
It doesn't matter.
Mr. Dodson, I was only playing.
Of course you were, my dear.
And to show you that I really and truly am sorry, you can have my prettiest handkerchief to dry your face.
Don't be foolish, Alice.
Thank you, my dear.
I'm sure Mr. Dodson has a much more sensible handkerchief of his own.
Yes, of course. One with big red spots on it.
Won't you tell us the story, please, Mr. Dodson?
Yes, please, Mr. Dodson.
Yes, please, Mr. Dodson.
Jolly good idea, Dodson. Then we can rest a bit in mid-stream, old chap.
Yes, it's quite nice out here. Those little summer gnats are less tiresome than they are on the bank.
A story?
Yes, please, Mr. Dodson. A story for Alice?
Well, where shall I begin? Well, if you remember, my dear, little Alice, still in the garden.
Alice?
Yes, Mama. Mr. Dodson is telling a story. Well, lots of lovely stories, really, about what might happen to Alice under the ground.
Oh, I see.
Hush, Mother.
It was time for Alice to have some tea. She saw a table laid under a tree, and the March Hare and the Mad Hatter were having tea at it. The Dormouse was sitting in between them, fast asleep. The other two were using it as a cushion, leaning their elbows on it, you know.
How very uncomfortable for the Dormouse. Only as it's asleep, I suppose it doesn't mind.
I could do with a little sleep, too, come to think of it.
The table was a large one, but the three of them were all crowded together in one corner.
No room.
There's plenty of room.
Have some wine.
I don't see any wine.
There isn't any.
Then it wasn't very civil of you to offer it.
It wasn't very civil of you to sit down without being invited.
Well, I didn't know it was your table. It's laid for a great many more than three.
Your hair wants cutting.
You should learn not to make personal remarks. It's very rude.
Why is a raven like a writing desk?
Oh, good riddles. I believe I can guess that.
Do you mean that you can find out the answer to it?
Exactly so.
Then you should say what you mean.
Well, I do. At least I mean what I say. Well, that's the same thing, you know.
Not the same thing a bit. Why, you might just as well say I see what I eat is the same thing as I eat what I see. Huh. What day of the month is it?
You might just as well say that I like what I get is the same thing as I get what I like.
What day of the month is it?
The 4th.
Oh, 2 days wrong. I told you butter wouldn't suit the works.
It was the best butter.
Yes, but some crumbs must have got in as well. You shouldn't have put it in with a bread knife.
I say, I really think we ought to eat, you know. It's time for the buns.
Alice had been looking over his shoulder with some curiosity. What a funny watch, she said. It tells the day of the month, but doesn't tell what o'clock it is. Meanwhile, to wake up the Dormouse, the Hatter had poured some tea upon its nose. Have you guessed the riddle yet?
No, I give it up. What's the answer?
I haven't the slightest idea.
Nor I.
I think you ought to do something better with the time than waste it asking riddles and have no answers.
And talking of time, shouldn't we be making for the bank, don't you think? I distinctly heard the clocks chime 4 across the meadows.
If you knew what time was as well as I do, said the Hatter, you wouldn't talk about wasting it. It's him.
What do you mean, him?
It's no use, Ma'am. Mr. Dodson is totally engrossed in his nonsense. And so, it seems, your charming daughters.
You mean to say you never even spoke to time?
Perhaps not, Mr. Dodson. But I know I have to beat time when I learn music.
That's it, Alice. He won't stand beating, you know. A very sensitive fellow. In the story, that is.
Yes, Mr. Dodson, in the story.
Oh, am I keeping you all?
Well, old chap, some of us do think it's time we had some tea ourselves.
Yes, tea, of course.
Oh, dear, tea. And I was so enjoying the Mad Hatter and the March Hare, Mr. Dodson. I wish they were all real.
Thank you, Mr. Dodson. We all thought it was very enjoyable.
Mr. Dodson, I'd wish you'd write down all Alice in Wonderland adventures in a book for me.
Too silly, Alice. Mr. Dodson has much better things to do with his time.
Like tucking into a hamper full of Chelsea buns, eh, Dodson?
Beautiful sound, sir, isn't it? Beautiful. As clear as, what shall we say, the proverbial bell,
And mercifully lacking the sentiment of the words.
Yes, quite. Now, I understood from your man, sir, a cheerful fellow, that this might be the kind of thing you wanted me to bring along.
I was looking for a present.
Oh, very nice, too, sir. Very, very nice.
A little something with a touch of magic.
Ah, a little something for a little someone, eh, sir? Ha ha.
Mechanical.
Oh, yes, sir, yes, marvelously so, sir, and as clear as a bell.
I do not think that magic can be made by clockwork, Mr. Stockman.
Oh, well, now, I wouldn't necessarily subscribe to that point of view, sir, if I may venture to say so.
No?
No, this is a great age for domestic marvels and unexpected wonders. The workshop of the world cannot be exhausted. We can supply all things today, sir, including magic.
The child could make magic with a piece of coloured chalk, a bouncing ball, a bowling hoop.
Yes. Now, I brought along one with a rosewood lid, sir, as you see, exquisitely worked, and with just the faintest touch of its own natural perfume. But not, of course, enough to offend a gentleman, sir. Now, the lid, as you will have already observed, is intricately inlaid with the most beautiful design. Appropriately enough, sir, the stars in their firmament. Like a diamond in the night. Beautiful thought that, sir, isn't it? Yes. Like a diamond in the night.
Why a diamond, Mr. Stotman?
Well, a diamond, sir? Gleaming bright, don't you know? 'Neath the canopy of God's universe, so to speak.
That is offensively trite, my good fellow.
Oh, is it? Yes, I suppose it is so when you actually come to think of it, that is.
Diamond. Why not a cat's eye?
Sir?
Or a boot stud? Or a tiger's tooth?
Yes, why not indeed, sir?
Or, come to that, a tea tray.
Your man, sir, suggested that I should bring along the prettiest box I have. This I have done, but as I see that you're not interested, perhaps...
Twinkle, twinkle, little tooth. No.
No, not a very good word. Doesn't exactly rhyme very well, sir, does it?
Tooth?
No, not tooth, sir. No, very poor word, that, for poetry.
Tooth. Truth? Forsooth? Roof even?
Well...
Twinkle, twinkle, little tooth, far above the leaking roof.
I'm afraid poetical imagining is not very much in my line, sir.
I will take it.
You will? Oh, of course, sir. A pleasure. Yeah.
Twinkle, twinkle, little stud, shining far above the mud.
Yes. Well, sir, I think perhaps if you'll...
Could I have the lid engraved at all? Perhaps on the underside?
Oh, certainly, sir. Very simple matter, yes. Presumably with the name of the fortunate recipient.
In tiny, tiny letters.
Very, very small, sir, yes. Undoubtedly.
To Alice. With love from the Mad Hatter.
I beg your pardon, sir?
The Mad Hatter.
You did say mad, sir?
I did. Good day to you, Mr. Stotman.
Good day, sir. Thank you. It shall be done.
Are you very busy, dear?
Tolerably so.
Oh.
Was there anything important?
No, not if you're busy.
Mm. I take it there's nothing wrong?
No. It's snowing, you know. I never liked looking from a lighted room into the dark.
No?
No. You notice how your reflection comes between you and the scene outside. You seem to get lost in the dark, or black. Black, nothing. You have to be in the dark yourself to see into the black out there.
I suppose so.
It's the same with human beings.
Did you wish to talk to me, dear?
No. It's just Mr. Dodson.
Dodson. That man, in spite of his virtues, is fast becoming a great nuisance to me, as I'm sure you realize. He seems to be at least 20 years older in his prejudices than his actual physical age. A most illiberal person indeed, and not least in his attitude to the government of this college.
But I'm not talking
Dodson,
about that.
I'm afraid, is implacably opposed to almost any alterations regarding the chapel. He even objects to the laying of a new drainage system in the college. That man is absolutely determined to defend the old order at Oxford.
But I don't wish to discuss college politics, dear, not at the moment.
There's a new movement, a new mood in the university, not before its time, in my considered opinion.
Did you know that Mr. Dodson has been writing to Alice?
What's that? Oh, yes, my dear. I know that in personal relationships, at least, he's as generous and kind-hearted, quite remarkably so. But I wasn't referring to his friendship for our daughters. There are always individuals who, for whatever perverse reason, are incapable of challenging the status quo.
Yes. They're so preoccupied with habit that they never listen.
Exactly, my dear.
Quite.
Whatever are you doing?
I'm just tearing up some old letters.
It's just that I find it a rather irritating sound, my dear.
Sorry.
You must keep quite still. quite still.
But Mother says that's impossible, Mr. Dodson.
Why is that?
Well, you know how tiresome mothers can be. She says, I'm a fidget, a perpetual fidget.
Well, I like you exactly as you are.
Do you really and truly, Mr. Dodson?
I wouldn't willingly change one hair of your head. What a funny man I am.
Oh, no, not funny. I mean only when you're trying to be funny. You're nice, Mr. Dodson.
So are you.
But if you want me to sit still, you'll have to tell me a story.
Oh, you are absolutely insatiable. I'm glad to say it.
About 3 sisters. Lorena, Edith, and I. And me.
Well, once upon a time...
Thank you, Mr. Dodson.
There were 3 little sisters. Edith, Lorena, and me. I'm sorry. I mean Alice. The prettiest one. Now, these 3 little sisters lived at the bottom of a very deep well.
What did they live on?
Treacle.
They couldn't have done that. They'd have been ill.
They were very ill.
Well, why did they live at the bottom of a well?
Because it was a treacle well.
Oh, there's no such things.
Oh, yes, there is. In the Forest of Dean. I've seen one.
Well, if you say so.
I do say so. Now, these 3 little sisters were learning to draw.
What did they draw?
Treacle.
But I don't understand. How could they do that?
Well, you can draw water out of a water well, can't you? So I should think that you could draw treacle out of a treacle well, couldn't you?
But they were in the well.
Yes, they were. Well in. Oh, I do love to hear you laugh, Alice.
Do you?
Yes. It's the prettiest sound I know. Will you always remember our moments together? Time can blot out so many things.
I couldn't forget, even if I tried.
But I don't doubt that you will. When you grow up, and perhaps one day come to marry.
Oh, no, Mr. Dodson. You will always be my friend, You can come and have tea with me every Sunday afternoon.
Have you ever thought who you would like to marry?
Is this another game, Mr. Dodson?
Well, I see that I am obviously speaking in riddles.
Oh, I do so like riddles. That's what I said to the Mad Hatter, isn't it?
Oh, no. The March Hare. You must be careful not to lose your head.
That's the Queen. The Queen of Hearts.
No, you must take care not to lose your head. To the first spotted youth with a curl and a pretty smile.
I thought we were going to have a game, Mr. Dodson.
Oh, yes, my dear.
Perhaps a funny song.
Oh, yes, my dear.
Come on, Mr. Dodson. I'm waiting.
Oh, yes, my dear. Twinkle, twinkle, little bat, how I wonder what you're at. Up above the world you fly, like a tea tray in the sky.
Well, I never heard that before, but it sounds uncommon nonsense. Oh.
What is his sorrow?
It's all his fancy, that. That there mock turtle hasn't got no sorrow. This here young lady, she wants to know your history, she do.
I'll tell it her. Sit down, both of you, and don't speak a word till I've finished.
I don't see how he can ever finish if he doesn't begin.
Once I was a real turtle. Oh.
Thank you, sir, for your interesting story.
When we were little, we went to school in the sea.
Oh, absolutely.
The master was an old turtle. We used to call him Tortoise.
Why did you call him Tortoise if he wasn't one?
We called him Tortoise because he taught us. Really, you are very dull.
You ought to be ashamed of yourself, asking such a simple question.
Yes, we went to school in the sea. Though you mayn't believe it.
I never said I didn't.
Hold your tongue!
How many hours a day did you do lessons?
10 hours the first day, 9 the next, and so on.
What a curious plan.
That's why they're called lessons. Because they lesson from day to day.
So the 11th must have been a holiday.
Of course it was.
How did you manage on the 12th?
Oh, that's enough about lessons. Tell her about the game now.
You may not have lived much under the sea, and perhaps you were never even introduced to a lobster.
I once tasted. No, never.
So you can have no idea what a delightful thing a lobster quadrille is.
No, indeed. What sort of dance is it?
Why, you first form a line along the seashore.
2 lines, seals, turtles, salmon, and so on. Then when you've cleared all the jellyfish out of the way...
That generally takes some time.
You advance twice.
Each with a lobster as partner.
Advance twice, set to partners.
Change lobsters again, retire in same order.
Then you throw
the lobsters
as far out to sea as you can.
Swim after them.
Return a somersault in the sea.
Change lobsters again. Back to land again. And
that's all.
The first figure.
It must be a very pretty dance.
Oh, would you like to see a little of it?
Yes, indeed.
Come, let's try the first figure.
Shall we?
Yeah, well, we can do it without the lobsters, you know. Who shall sing?
Oh, you sing. Then I will too. Will you walk a little faster instead of whining to a snail? There's a porpoise close behind us, and he's treading on my tail. See how eagerly the lobsters and the turtles all advance. They're waiting on the shingle. Won't you come and join the dance? Will you, won't you, will you, won't you, will you join the dance? Will you, won't you, will you, won't you, won't you join the dance?
It's done. Done. It really is, in places, remarkably funny. Soup of the evening, beautiful, beautiful soup. Who cares for you, said Alice. You're nothing but a pack of cards. At this, the whole pack rose up into the air, came flying down upon her. She gave a little scream, half of fright and half of anger, and tried to beat them off, and found herself lying on the bank with her head in the lap of her sister, who was gently brushing away some dead leaves that had fluttered down from the trees upon her face. I can just see Alice's face when I present her with this. It really is. It really is. In places. Remarkably funny.
Would you care for some more kidney?
Yes, thank you. Perhaps you might like to glance at this.
What is it?
A note from Dodson. A prim and precise hand.
Mr. Dodson, what's it about?
Well, read it. Read it, my dear. I didn't know he'd been writing this book about Alice.
Yes, I'm not sure that I like it.
No, possibly not.
How will you reply?
Well, I shall simply say that I cannot allow a nursery tale to be dedicated to my daughter.
But he suggests the illustrator should come and see Alice.
Oh, no. No, that's too much to ask.
If Alice is, as it were, a character in this book, do you think other members of the family might be represented?
I hope not.
Not that he notices any other member of the family. I think it would be politic if Mr. Dodson were to see a little less of Alice in the future.
Yes. Yes, my dear. But do be careful not to upset his feelings. He's a very sensitive man. Quite distressingly so at times.
I have the feeling sometimes that Mr. Dodson would be quite content to wait until Alice is grown up.
Whatever do you mean?
Marriage.
Oh. Oh, really, my dear? Such horrible fantasies at the breakfast table. He might as well wait for the moon to turn to cheese. Or fried bacon.
Yes, it is rather pathetic.
I don't suppose anyone will bother to read his blasted book either.
I found it an altogether entrancing little book, my dear Mr. Dodson. Very unusual. Yes, I think we may well hope for a reasonable sale after all.
Thank you.
Charming sense of the fantastic and childlike.
Oh, it's very kind of you.
Nothing to give even the tiniest of our readers anything approaching a nightmare. Where are the werewolves of yesteryear, Mr. Dodson?
Wolves?
A mere whimsy, my dear fellow. The nursery red in tooth and claw. You tell me that Alice is drawn from your recollection of Dean Little's daughter.
Yes, that is so.
You must be very fond of the child.
Yes, I am.
It's such a pleasant change to handle a beautiful manuscript that has not been distilled out of some private agony. Writers, to be quite frank with you, Mr. Dodson, can be the most awfully boring people, don't you think?
Is there something wrong?
Oh, my dear sir. Soup of the evening,
Beautiful, beautiful, super capital cat. Yes, well now, if, as you tell me, Miss Liddell was the inspiration for the delightful Alice, then we must ask Mr. Tenniel to make his illustrations fit the subject.
No. The Dean and Mrs. Liddell have expressed a wish otherwise.
Oh, but I can't see that.
No, but they seem to find it embarrassing.
Dear. Still, Mr. Tenniel probably does not need that degree of verisimilitude for his model. The matter need not trouble us.
There is a little girl, Canon Babcock's daughter, with long hair and a snub nose. Perhaps she?
Of course. The girl, Alice Liddell, I mean, she at least must be excited by all this business. After all, she will have something to remember for the rest of her days.
Yes, I hope that is so.
And something to show her children.
Her children? Quite. But you know, the time will come for me to say goodbye to my childish friends when I have to doff my hat to them in the street.
I have a feeling in my bones, Mr. Dodson, that you will find little bits of Alice all over the place. Oh, dear, that sounds unusually gruesome.
Well, what do you mean, sir?
I mean, quotations, don't you know? Some passages insist on finding house room in the mind. I myself am exceedingly fond of quoting from books, Mr. Dodson.
Well, 'tis the sign of a well-furnished mind, Mr. Macmillan.
How sharper than the serpent's tooth it is to have a thankless child. King Lear?
King Lear.
King Lear.
Quotations can be used like bludgeons in insensitive hands.
The nursery still lisps out in all they utter. Besides, they always smell of bread and butter. Lord Byron, sir.
Lord Byron.
Lord Byron.
I must go.
If you give me 6 lines, written by the most honest man, I will find something in them to hang him. Cardinal Richelieu.
Small have continuous plodders ever won, save base authority from others' books. Shakespeare.
Shakespeare?
Shakespeare, sir. Good day to you.
Oh, yes. Of course. Love's labour's lost.
Who are you?
I hardly know, sir. Just at present. At least I know who I was when I got up this morning, but I think I must have changed several times since then.
What do you mean by that? Explain yourself.
I can't explain myself, I'm afraid, sir, because I'm not myself. You see?
I don't see.
Well, I'm afraid I can't put it more clearly, for I don't understand it myself to begin with. And being so very many different sizes in one day, it's very confusing.
It isn't.
Well, maybe you haven't found it so. But when you turn into a chrysalis, you will someday, you know, and then into a butterfly, I should think you'll feel it a little queer, wouldn't you?
Not a bit.
Well, perhaps your feelings may be different. All I know is it would feel very queer to me.
You? Who are you?
I think you ought to tell me who you are first.
Why? Come back. I've something important to say. Keep your temper.
Is that all?
No. So you think you're changed, do you?
I'm afraid I am, sir. For I can't remember things as I read, and I don't keep the same size for 10 minutes together.
Can't remember what things?
I've tried to say, how doth the little busy bee, but it all came different.
Repeat. You are old, Father William.
You are old, Father William, the young man said, and your hair has become very white. And yet you incessantly stand on your head. Do you think at your age it is right? But it's lovely, Mr. Dodson. The most wonderful thing, the most exciting thing that's ever happened.
Oh, thank you, my darling.
I shall read it again and again and again. Then I shall start at the last page and finish at the first.
I hope you will always cherish it.
I will.
Even when you are quite grown up, little Alice.
I said so, Mr. Dodson.
Oh, yes, I did not mean to doubt your word.
It's only a book, isn't it?
Alice!
Oh, what is it, Lorena?
Are you coming boating?
Oh, yes. I won't be a moment. It's only Mr. Dodson here. I'm sorry, Mr. Dodson, but I have to go now. Lorena's going on the river. And there's a very nice boy coming too. He's a very good oarsman. He seems rather fond of Lorena.
I brought this book because... Do you know why I chose today to bring you the presentation copy of this book, Alice?
I shall always look after it, Mr. Dodson.
Because it is exactly 3 years to the day since we went up the river.
Lorena's going to be very impatient with me, Mr. Dodson.
Well, then you must hurry, my dear. Mechanical?
Ah, Mr. Dodson. Good morning. And a beautiful one, too. I'm afraid Alice isn't here.
No.
I saw her disappear through the garden at the most tremendous rate. On her way to the river, no doubt.
Yes. Yes.
But of course, if she had been aware that you were calling...
She prefers the river.
Oh, nonsense.
She prefers the river, I say. She prefers the river.
Well, maybe so, maybe so. Anyway, in this weather... Are you feeling all right, Mr. Dodson?
Perfectly, thank you.
Well, perhaps you would like to take a chair. We might discuss one or two matters of interest regarding the college. I had been meaning to discuss with you the reallocation of rooms in Peckwater Quad. Now it would seem as good at... Are you sure there's nothing wrong?
Are you sure that there is nothing right?
I beg your pardon?
You seem to have... You, sir. I'm talking about you. Mistakenly taking it for granted that all changes for the better. The reverse is often the case.
My dear fellow, I was merely going to propose that...
This college withstand yet further reform. I know, sir. I know. Tradition is no longer enough. The past must be dismembered. Broken. We shall make up one morning and find Tom Quad full of foul-mouthed navvies, steam engines, and cast-iron piping.
Oh, really, Mr. Dodson, this exaggeration is...
Nothing beautiful is to be left alone. Is to be left in peace.
I can see that you're very upset about something, Mr. Dodson. I think we'd better postpone discussion on this matter until a future time.
Why? I do not get my way. I don't see the point in all this. My feelings are trampled on in the most disgraceful fashion. My motives are continually misunderstood. How much can a man endure?
My dear fellow, you...
Good day to you, sir. Good day to you.
What an extraordinary thing. Good gracious. Good gracious me.
Mr. Dodson? Papa? Well, Mr. Dodson was here a moment ago. I came back to fetch the book he gave me, to show Lorena and Edith.
The book?
It's the most wonderful, wonderful book, Papa. Alice, that's me, of course, in Wonderland.
Alice, you haven't by any dreadful chance been Rude, Mr. Dodson. Thoughtlessly unkind.
Of course not. I thanked him very kindly. Then Lorena told me to come on the skiff.
Yes. Alice, does Mr. Dodson ever frighten you?
Frighten me?
Well, I don't quite mean that.
I told Lorena I wouldn't be long. I only came back for the book.
Alice, this measure, wasn't that also a present to you from Mr. Dodson?
Oh, that old thing. Ages and ages ago.
But he has been very kind to you.
Of course, Papa, always. Please, can I take my book?
Alice, a childish story take, and with a gentle hand, lay it where childhood's dreams are twined, in memory's mystic band.
It's wonderful, isn't it, Papa?
Very.
I must hurry now.
Alice,
Yes, Papa?
a gentle hand, my child. The verse says, take it with a gentle hand.
Oh, yes. All young ladies must be gentle.
Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. With inadequate drainage, no doubt.
All this talk, is draining my strength. You know that?
Precisely. But tell her about the whiting. She knows nothing of whiting.
Nothing.
I know they have their tails in their mouths.
I can tell you more than that if you like. Do you know why it's called a whiting?
I've never really thought about it. Why?
Does the boots and shoes.
Does the boots and shoes?
What are your shoes done with? I wonder what makes them so shiny.
They're done with blacking, I believe.
Boots and shoes under the sea are done with whiting, now you know.
What are they made of?
Soles and eels, of course. Any shrimp could tell you that.
As to the whiting, oh.
Same as if we had a bone in his throat.
Oh, be gentle. Please be gentle.
You may not have lived much under the sea, but I can tell you what it is. No wise fish would go anywhere without a porpoise.
Wouldn't it?
Of course not. Why, if a fish came to me and told me he was going on a journey, I would say to him, with what purpose?
Don't you mean purpose?
I mean what I say.
Anyway, let's hear some of your adventures now.
Well, I could tell you my adventures beginning from this morning, but it's no use going back to yesterday, because I was a different person then.
Explain all that.
Oh, no. Explanations take such a dreadful time. Anyway.
Anyway?
Several years have just passed.